Hi everyone, welcome to this another video, and in this video we are going to see the last episode, last game of Caro-Kann formation pawn structure, and we'll see a game between Vadim versus Alexander Evdokimov. Okay, so I have taken this game from Russian Championship in from 2011, and here we will see the example of how Black may carry out the b7 b5 break, but then white will actually accept that, and then c6 pawn will become a weakness. We'll see that in a quick moment, and this position actually came from a simple Caro-Kann classical structure. And here white, usually the main development idea is to play bishop to f4, rook to e1, c3. Okay, this is the natural development, but white played with b3, and definitely it's not that much unusual. You are keeping your bishop onto this long diagonal. Okay, and you are ready to carry out the plan with c4 d5. Okay, so definitely not the mainstream line, but definitely not a line which you can easily neglect. So bishop e7, bishop b2, castle, and c5. So white enjoys a small advantage in, as usual, in this kind of pawn structure where white is having very good center control, little bit more space advantage. So black played queen a5, a3. The idea is to prevent bishop a3. Okay, that was black's main plan, to exchange the bishop on b2. So a3, rook f8, rook e1, bishop d3. We'll just see few moves that how the game went. And here in this moment, black played b5. Okay, so black carried out his plan with b5, and now we'll see. And this is a very quite typical for this kind of structure, which often gives black decent counterplay. But here we will see that how white actually over trump black's idea and mainly attack that weak c6 pawn. So here white played knight f5. So white cannot afford to be careless in this position with cb5, and then after queen b5 definitely black is having very good counterplay. That b3 pawn will be weak, rook b8. Yes, my c6 pawn will be weak. So sorry. So in this position, let's go cb5, queen b5, queen c2. Obviously, after queen b5, cb5, this d4 pawn is weak. Knight d5 can easily block. Black will enjoy this endgame very happily. So knight f5, bishop to f8. You cannot. If you take on ef5, then rook e7, bc4, queen c4, and even after knight d5, this is still weakness. Rook e2, rook a b8, and this position is little bit unclear, I would say. But also white is the one that who is definitely play b4, and c6 pawn will be weak, rook c2. I'll put more and more pressure on that c6 pawn. So definitely the b2 bishop is quite useless at this moment, but definitely it can come into the game later on with 95, like that. So bishop f8 played, knight e3, and now the knight just rerouted from g3 to e3, and which is a better square actually. Rook a b8 played. So in rook a b8, after this move, black actually came into under some pressure. So instead of that move, so black could try out b into c4, knight into c4, queen to b5, and intending to play, if you play b4, then a5 is definitely there. So if because you cannot take knight into a5, so definitely black is having very good counterplay. So rook a b8, queen c2 played, bc4, knight c4, queen b5, and b4. Now if you look at it, you cannot achieve a5. Knight can take here. Okay, and c6 pawn is weak, you cannot achieve c5 also. Okay, and that was the main idea, that how the knight has rerouted from this g3 to f5 to e3 to c4. Okay, and now c6 is definitely a weakness, and slowly black white pieces will come and try to hit the c6 pawn. So h6 played, bishop to c1, knight to d5, bishop to d2. White improves this bishop position, which was previously pretty much useless on b2. So rook bc8, sorry, rook ac1, queen a6, h3, rook c7. Black is trying to double up, knight a5, bishop to d6, queen c4. White is offering queen trade because the endgame, resulting endgame will be definitely favoring white. Queen into c4, rook into c4, rook dc8, rook c1. And if we look at it, black is already in a defensive mode where his pieces are pretty much tied down to defend this c6 pawn. We can clearly understand this thing that c6 is a pretty much weakness. You cannot achieve c5 break as well, and this pawn is quite falling apart. So knight b6 played, sorry, knight e7 played, and it is clear that how white dominates the game. It is not quite so easy to find a winning plan as black position remains very solid, but it is very evident that this position white is dominating. So rook c4 to c2, knight to b6, knight to e5, and 1 minute. Cut. Start. So now again here black is forced to give up the dark square bishop right now, and white will simply eliminate the d4 pawn. So b into bishop into c5, e5, d into e5, knight b, d5, king f1, king f8, rook to c5, king e8, knight to c4, and again this all eye on this weak d6 square, king d7. uh, Definitely the preferable way to continue this game is definitely to king e2, king d3, king e4. Okay, so try to centralize the king. White has played rook f5 in the game, knight f5, bishop to e3, knight fe3, fe3. So again this situation, this double pawn we definitely don't look like here. What black has missed here, black has played f6, which is definitely not the correct way to continue. Black should immediately play c5 and try to get rid of this weakness. So b5, rook b8, king e2, knight b6, and black black keeps the position approximately equal. So f6, e4, sorry, e4, knight to b6, rook into a7. Uh, a questionable decision was possibly made under time pressure because both players were running quite low on time. But it is unclear whether white can exploit this advantage in the rising rook endgame. And knight into c4, rook into c7, rook into c7, rook into c4, f into e5. So definitely white is having an outside pass pawn, but the rest of the thing we will see it pretty quickly that how white won the game, but there were multiple mistakes from both sides, but we'll quickly see. White played a4, rook a7, a5, rook b7, king e2, rook b5, and this maneuver was very necessary. King d3 and c5. Black is just in time. It is possible that probably white has missed this when he played rook into a7, and he has to take rook into c5, rook into b4, rook c4, rook b3 check, rook c3, rook b2, g4, rook a2, rook c5, king d6, rook b5, rook a4. And in this position, definitely black is still, white is still not clear that how white is going to win the game. So h4 played, rook d4 check, king e3, rook a4, ready to play rook a3. So h5, rook a3 check, king d2, rook a4, again king d3, rook d4, king e3, rook a4, rook b7. At last, white said, okay, let's give up the pawn on a5 and go to the king side to attack. Rook a3 check, king f2, king c5, rook into g7, rook into a5, rook g6, king d4, and rook h6, king e4, rook f6. And now at this position, rest of the things were easy because now these two pawns are quite unstoppable. King is cutted off from the f file, and these pawns are going nowhere. And white has tremendous counterplay. And not only counterplay, I would say that the pawns are going forward. There is no you can stop. The pass pawns are unstoppable. So rook a1, king to g2, rook a2 check, rook f2, rook a8, h6, rook h8, g5, king d3. Black is trying to create some sort of counterplay, but definitely black is not going to have fun. Rook g8, rook g7, and at this moment black resigned because h6, 7, h7 is coming, g6 is coming, and then rook d7 check g7. Game will be over. Black, whatever black will play, it doesn't matter. Rook f8, h6. I'm threatening rook g8. You have to play this g6 and then rook g8. Game is over. You are pretty slow here in this moment, and after rook g8, black is already lost. So black resigned after rook g7. So I hope that we have seen quite a roller coaster game that where black played b5, black generated some counterplay, black in the time pressure both players little bit made some inaccuracies, okay, but at the end white won the game. But what we have learned in this situation that after b5, if white plays quite correctly, didn't make any mistake precisely, then c6 pawn becomes little bit quite weak and white can exploit, okay, in this kind of pawn structure. So I hope you like this video. If you like it, kindly share with your friends. If you are new in my channel, please subscribe and please comment it down below what kind of videos you want to see. And uh, if you tell me that where should I improve, then I'll be very happy to take your feedback as well. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.